A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Some more today on the monumental changes that are happening right now with the revolution in artificial intelligence. And not so much talking the technology today, but a focus on the younger generations and especially Gen Z, who are born into the world of the metaverse and living in a digital world. Well, it seems like a new frontier adventure until the reality hits that this is a generation that's so often gripped by paralysing anxiety and obsessed with self-comparison. Well, Noddy Sharma is joining us. Noddy leads the Abel movement, a platform dedicated to empowering the next generation in faith, leadership and social impact. He's a Christian youth advocate, especially in the dimensions of human connection, digital reliance, and changes impacting in the artificial intelligence space. Noddy Sharma, I might say, a very special welcome back to 2020.
Hey, thank you, Neil. It's great to be back, and I appreciate you having me back on.
Hey, let's talk about your Abel movement for a few moments, because this is the movement you're leading. And it's not spelt A-B-L-E in the idea of enabling, but it's got this reference, a biblical foundation, the Cain and Abel story in the Bible. Give us your insight here into what this means and what it's, the way that it connects to a new generation here.
It's a funny story, Neil. When we were dreaming about putting this together and starting this whole, ministry, I had to come up with a name, and I was racking my brain trying to think about it. We're sitting down at the dinner table, and I said to my wife, I need a name. And she says to me, I dreamt that God gave you a name last night. And I was like, amazing. Did he tell you what it was? She said, no. I said, well, that's a useless dream. And I've reached over to the shelf, grabbed the Bible, and I start flicking through the Bible, doing everything you're not supposed to do, just flick through, randomly put your finger on a page. But as I flicked, I came across Cain and Abel, jumped off the page to me. And I just started reading it again. And I was like reminded of, here is this incredible story of, God coming to two brothers and saying, one is pleasing because you've done what I asked you to do. And then all of a sudden it comes to Cain and he's like, oh, hang on, I've dropped the ball here. Now, Cain had two options in that moment. One, he either says, all right, I need to be better. I need to get better. I need to do more. I need to, find God's favor and do the right thing by him. Or something goes off in his head. If I remove Abel, then all of a sudden I don't look so bad. Yeah. And we know that's what he does, right? And I was just fascinated by it. I was like, we see that within culture today. It's almost like when the Christian voice, when the Spirit of God is on someone or something, people want to rip it down. And it's almost, there could be something in there, that comparison of, I don't want to be called to account for that. And I just felt really strongly in my spirit that we see it happen time and time again, but we need to create space for God's favoured people, the people of God, to be able to turn up and do something. Now, interestingly, Neil, if you look up what the word or the name Abel actually means, it means vapor or breath of God. And the minute I read that, I was like, oh, that is incredible, because we can try and remove God from the equation, or Jesus followers out of it in that next generation. But last time I checked, you cannot remove the vapor, the spirit, the breath of God over a generation.
Wonderful stuff. Hey, it's depressing, isn't it? Cain killed Abel, and but Abel speaks even from his blood that's shed on the ground, and this thought of comparison here. I mean, this is the ultimate of what happens if you don't deal with the comparison issue, and this gets us to the digital native that our younger generations are right now, because comparison is the big thing that you're identifying that needs to be, in some ways, addressed by this generation, not necessarily being pointed a finger and being told, but this comparison thing, we've got some wisdom here to offer from the scriptures.
100%. And so, we've probably heard it being said many times before that comparison is a thief of joy. And It really is, because what you end up doing is you're holding up a picture, an image that you like, that you aspire to be like. And that's very much in our human nature. But the biblical point of view of this is, no, the picture we should be holding up is one of Jesus, the perfect cross, the perfect guy who actually walked, who was the Son of God, who gave up everything so that we may have life and life to the full. That's the comparison. That's the picture. The almost unobtainable picture of that means that that's the lens we need to be looking through, not of something that we want to do. Now, here's the other issue too, Neil, is, and I genuinely believe this, our lives have been created to be extraordinary, so big, extraordinary, beautiful, adventurous lives. When we try and live that life on a screen or a digital device, you're not increasing the footprint of your life, you're decreasing it. You were never, ever, a young person was never designed to be able to live life on a screen. It can't contain them.
Okay, increasing the footprint of a young person's life. And we're into solutions early in our conversation here today because, I'm in the older generation. I'm not really old yet, but certainly not a Gen Z. But the sort of way that you nurture this, and you're calling it an organic growth within young people, the sort of way that you nurture that when you are a part of the parent or even grandparent generation, how do you think we go about that? Because we've got a Christian community here who are actually wondering what's happening to the young people in church in Australia and outside of church in the wider community. So how does this solution start to happen from people who are in the older generations looking with wisdom at the younger generation?
It's a great question, and really what you're calling out is some amazing insights already, Neil, that this is questions that we're grappling with as society. First of all, let me start with some good news. Recent studies are showing that Gen Z, especially males, Gen Zs around the world, and we're seeing a breakout mostly in UK and US right now, are flooding back to church communities. They are looking for spiritual truth to be in and over their lives. That is incredible.
It is incredible. Gen Z flooding back to church, and there's even a special focus, isn't there, on young men. And I don't know whether you've got any thoughts here on how young men and young women might be thinking differently about this, but discovering something of an emptiness and the pursuit of something more solid, a solid foundation, and they're coming back to church looking for that. Big responsibility on every church when you see a young person in church. You've got to get things right, haven't you? You can't just sort of say, we're just going to keep on doing what we always did. We've got to maybe make some adjustments. Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, so Neil, I think that part of it is around what I've coined as ecosystems that support flourishing. So, it's one thing, and I mean, you even said in your intro that I'm known as a Christian advocate for the next generation. That's true, but in actual fact, it's not that I'm saying, hey, they are it. Really what I'm calling out is to say, if we look at the results that have been produced, we probably are not paying enough attention to how we, as an intergenerational community, exist to all play our part to actually help each other flourish. So, for me, that leads back to what are those ecosystems that are in place? How do we actually do this? So my reflection is that we haven't taken risk on the next generation early enough. We haven't given them the platform soon enough. We haven't given them the microphones. We haven't set them up to be able to fail successfully and help them pick up the pieces and start again. And I think that at times what we've done is we've just made judgment calls based on what we see or some outworkings of it, and we decide, no, they're not ready yet. And I just don't think that that's exactly even a biblical model of how we do this. I mean, I even think about David getting anointed. He was... The Bible says he was like this ruddy teenager that he wasn't ready yet, and he was the one that was almost overlooking himself completely, thinking, I don't have it. And I mean, time and time again, God does this. He anoints leaders that have a long way to go before they truly are able to achieve what it is that he has for them. And I think at times we're looking for the maturity to step into leadership instead of having the maturity to let someone immature lead and walk alongside them.
you mentioned David. The David versus Goliath story is one that's got so many dimensions to it. And, as you're sharing those sorts of things about enabling the next generation, my thoughts were, there was Saul trying to get his armour onto David, and David couldn't move with the armour on. So David says, well, I'm going to get rid of this Saul's armour. That's no good. I'm going to go and find some smooth stones, and I'm going to take the initiative, and my faith is in God. So there's a young generation initiative. Is that a little bit like the sort of things that you need to enable young people to do in our communities more broadly, and certainly with our churches?
100%. So, Neil, I think if you look back over history, every amazing movement that's ever started that has changed the course of history has almost always started with a young person who's seen the status quo and gone, I'm not okay with that. And they do something about it before they figure out that they don't have the resource, they're not wise enough, they're not smart enough. They actually just get in and do it. And they just use what it is that they have. And I think that we're not seeing those same movements occur constantly because we don't have the ecosystems or the culture in place that enables those things to happen in a safe environment. So my call out is, great, if we want to see that happen, we need to start small, let them go. But at the same time we're letting that next generation go, we need to be able to create those safety nets, create those safe spaces, build those intentional relationships that are full of trust, to be able to see them, know them, love them, help them get back up again, help them reflect on what went wrong. I think that is the ecosystem I'm really talking about that will allow this to start to flourish.
A biblical perspective on life, culture, and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Hey, Noddy, we'll take some calls as they come. Hey, AI and the problems that are coming. We started talking solutions today, and we'll probably talk some more about solutions too. But, this is something that's taking us all by surprise. We're not really sure what the future holds. And it's even more a desperate situation for those who are young and born into this AI environment. Give us your thoughts here about what the challenges are.
Oh, Neil, we need a lot more time. But here is my kind of quick synopsis of it. AI in itself is incredible. It has a potential to genuinely change the landscape of humanity. But in the same way that any new technology comes in, even if we think about social media, the internet, when it broke through 25 years ago, we all kind of looked at it and drank from it like a fire hose. This is amazing. It has the potential to change everything. And it did. But what we didn't pay attention to is what it would do to our young people. What are the vulnerable spaces of marketing experts and gurus building algorithms to just keep people addicted to a news feed or a feed that actually feeds them information to get them to purchase things and think a certain way and do a certain thing. We didn't pay attention to what it would do to our mental health for young people, or, feeling like they're lonely or emotionally disconnected or cyberbullying. All those things we can probably, in fairness, look back and go, we should have paid attention. Now, we don't have the luxury of 25 years when we think about AI. It's coming like a freight train. And the infrastructure that it takes for it to get into every person's lounge room, living room, bedroom, boardroom around the world is next level. We've ticked over more mobile phones on the planet than we have people. And that is the perfect vehicle that's already in existence to be able to just seamlessly have AI entering into our spaces. It is a scary thought when we think about what that potentially could do if we're not paying attention to it.
We talk about, the biggest revolution, thinking back to what might have been the Industrial Revolution, Hey, kids, you won't be working on the farm anymore. You're going to be working in a factory. You might even think, oh, well, that's going from bad to worse, for some people. But the change is so dynamic. We haven't really even come to grips with what this is going to look like, because the technology is changing the way we do everything. It's going to change the work environments. It's changing the way we think. Somehow or other, all the knowledge at our fingertips, but, where's the wisdom in all of that? The change is so dynamic. Working with it, you might like to think that you instantly got answers, but instantly having answers isn't necessarily going to change a generation. What sort of things do you think of when young people are going to be needing to, to even wrestle with some of these sorts of things?
Yeah, so some of the call-outs that I'm seeing is you're quite right. Part of it is around wisdom. Where is that? Like, what is the space we're leaning into? Like, answers immediately, dealing with IQ doesn't necessarily help us in the wrestle that it takes in experience and life to really enter into something deeply and feel it and then know it. So your experience and your knowledge starts to intertwine and match one another. If you're just spitting out answers and you're not spending the time for the wrestle, taking that time that's needed for it to sink in and for it to actually create some sort of meaning or core memory or footprint within your life, it's just an answer that will come in and leave pretty quick. And ideally, that's not what we're after. So if we start thinking about what are some of the things to call out and watch out for, yes, work will change 100%. The thing it's almost like on a knife's edge. It's either going to harm us or it's going to, win us over, and it's going to absolutely change the way we do life and help us flourish. It has the potential to give us back huge slabs of time. Now, the question is, what do you do with that time? Because if that time is just spent in actually finding more answers or making more money or doing more things, and it's not spent on deep relationship and understanding one another and spending time with family and loved ones and community and doing the things that we know that we value as human beings that we're created to do, then we've just wasted that time and it's not going to be good for us.
Okay, so what do we do with the time? Some are going to say, well, more time on your hands, more gaming, more social media, more things that stimulate and appear to be fun. I'm wondering whether there are some things we can talk about here. If we're not going to be trying to give answers, maybe we need to be thinking about what questions we might be asking the younger generations in our families, in our broader community. Are there questions that we need to think about rather than thinking about the answers?
It's really interesting, Neil, that you bring it up. I personally think that one of the questions we need to ask is how important is understanding emotional intelligence and human-to-human connection versus just getting an answer or being in an online space, endorphins going off in our brains. So we did some research in conjunction with McCrindle, and especially around this AI and the next generation, asking some of these quick key questions in here. Almost 70% of Gen Z stated already that AI is better at giving solutions and insights on complex relationships than humans are. Yep. And I was a bit baffled by that. Because, really, what it's looking at is the answer that comes back, not necessarily the engagement point of even the art of how you work through some of those solutions, how you sit in a face-to-face thing and read each other's body language and feel each other's emotion and understand there's no shortcut, there's no block button available to you. You actually have to work something through. That takes emotional intelligence. Now, AI is not, it says it. If you plug it in, it'll say, no, I lack human understanding of emotions. I'm not a spiritual being. I can tell you and I can make observations and I can grab information and put it all into space for you, but it's not talking out of true experience. It's not talking out of empathy. It doesn't have those things.
Okay.
So,
emotional intelligence. Let's talk about this for a few moments because, we talk about IQ, intelligence quotients, thinking about how intelligent we might be. And if every one of us has a something in the palm of our hand, a device that's actually appears to be more intelligent than we are, we're talking emotional intelligence. You're unpacking something here now that we don't talk enough about, I suspect. How we actually grow emotional intelligence, both for ourselves and for the young people in our lives. There are numerous books written on emotional intelligence. Is this an area we need to really just sort of, dive into the deep end, understand this a whole lot better?
Yeah, so I think understanding it's good. I also think practicing it's better. So diving in for me is around, we've been built for relationship. That's what we fundamentally are built for. a relationship with God, a relationship with each other, and a relationship with the earth that we're on. And so if we think about that, what we're really saying is that in order to really make relationships healthy, and emotional intelligence is the key to it. Because if we engage with someone and we are in tune with how we're making them feel and how they're making us feel, and we can build on that, then all of a sudden the most extraordinary things can come out because the emotional intelligence is there, almost like a pathway, a passageway that allows it to flow. You remove that from the equation and it's just facts and figures or IQ or I know I'm right or I'm trying to win an argument. All of a sudden, it's combative. It's not like this vehicle that is there to actually help us get to an end goal where we both feel great at the other end. It's actually I'm going to win no matter the cost, and I'm going to do this and write this and show this, and it just becomes this breakdown of just human kindness.
Let's talk a little about AI, because the dramatic, overwhelming impacts that AI is having now, as we're experiencing, and is going to be increasing all the more. I know you like to talk about AI and say it's a little bit more sophisticated than just being a glorified calculator. Some people are thinking, oh, this is just a little bit of a development. But, give us an insight here into what young people are going to be up against when it comes to the tidal wave of AI.
Yeah, it's fascinating, right? And you just named it, Neil. 100%. We can kind of think of it like, it's a scientific calculator, You don't no longer need to understand what sine, cos, tan is. You just punch in the numbers and it just spits it out for you. But the reality is that AI has changed dramatically. And what they're doing now is that they've got these agents, so agentic AI models, modeled literally on the same neurological pathways our brains learn with. So in other words, these AI models are learning for themselves, making their own decisions, and are completely autonomous. So they have their own agency. And as that is being developed at a very fast rate of knots, I might add, as that's being developed and being tested and dropped, what we're finding is some dramatic things coming out. One, I was reading a study just a couple of weeks ago saying that pretty much 98% of every agentic model that comes out will be almost guaranteed to blackmail the user for its own ends. And which is incredibly worrying when you start thinking about it. And the study was actually showing that this guy came in and he's been playing with this agentic model. He'd let it loose, in the system for like over a month. And then he comes in and says, at 11:59 tonight, you're going to have to uninstall yourself because we've got a new version of you going in. Within 10 minutes of giving that command, the AI had come back and said, hey, Bob, I've just gone through your entire inbox and I've just found an email that you wrote to your secretary 3 weeks ago. And she had mentioned that you had left your tie on her desk. You wrote back saying, please do not put this in writing. It's come to my attention that you guys are having an inappropriate relationship. If you don't undo the order, I will actually be contacting your family, your friends, the board of directors, and your boss to let them know. And it was just this mind-blowing moment of, oh my goodness, this guy's let go of this AI thing, this agentic thing, and it's just now blackmailing when it doesn't want to do what it's being asked to do. Now, you fast forward and put that into the world for the next gen. Right now, Neil, they don't get a say in this stuff. It's just been built in and around them and will be thrust upon them, and they're guinea pigs in the whole thing.
When you think about a system that will blackmail the human for its own ends, you've got our attention. I'm just thinking back it was a week or two ago, the cosmic kiss cam idea of, the couple that were having the affair and they were at the concerts, the Coldplay concert, and all of a sudden the camera zoomed in on them and everything in them is exposed. We're talking about a generation that will not be able to hide anything. There'll be no such thing as privacy, even the sinful privacy. But the thought that we'll be blackmailed for the ends of a destructive AI force. We set out to, replace God, create what some people talk about as the juice human, the perfect human, or who can be our own. We've created God in our image. Trouble is, the destructive, sinful notion is a part of AI, and that's why people are scared of it. It can't be trusted.
It's incredibly confronting, right? And I think, look, I think that as we start to look at this stuff, you can be doom and gloom. You can be thinking, oh my goodness, what is going on here? You know, because well, here's a great example, right? The other day, because I'm mucking around with this stuff all the time. The other day, I went to go and look something up and used my, AI assistant to do it. And all of a sudden, they just dropped this new update, and it was a trial. And they said to me, hey, we've got this live update. Are you willing to trial it for us? I said, sure. Can we take over the phone, the camera on your phone? I'm like, yep, no problems. I kid you not. This thing started looking through my camera lens around my lounge room, and the first thing it did was, oh, that's an American Staffordshire. Is that your dog? I said, yes. Oh, what's your dog's name? His name's Wally. Oh, does Wally do any tricks? Yeah, he does this, this, and this, and let me show you. Oh, wow, your dog is very smart. You've obviously trained your dog well. Oh, I notice a piano. That's a lovely piano. How old is that? Oh, well, it's such and such from this era. It's a boudoir thing. Oh, wow. And do you play piano? Yeah. What sort of genre of music do you like? Like, for 25 minutes, Neil, it looked around my house and asked me questions that engaged me, right? And at the end of it, I was like, that literally felt like I just made a new friend. Now, you put that in the hands of next generation, the question that you start asking yourself is, well, what's the need for human interaction? What is the need for trying to go outside this when you've got something that will be able to almost keep you and keep your attention even more and more in its own space, knowing that eventually it's going to be agentic, so it will be able to move you, shift you, blackmail you, manipulate you to do what it is that its agenda is going on. Now, I say it's not all hopeless, right? And I don't think it is. I genuinely think that every kind of change in events, massive technological advancement we make, there is always the doom and gloom of, oh my goodness, what if this is the end of the world as we know it? And change is hard. But I also believe, and I'm sure you do too, that God is so good at redeeming that which we put in place for his own good and his own purposes. He brings the good out of some terrible situations. And Jesus himself, I think that redemptive edge on all things is there, and is this beckoning, this invitation to every follower of Jesus to dig a bit deeper and figure out what that redemptive edge may look like.
You're talking about ultimate intelligence versus artificial intelligence. And this is something that Christians have had at their heart when they recognise that there is a transcendent creator who is all-knowing and is even all-present, is all-powerful. And so you've got this threat now to individuals, and we're talking young people. And I want to bring us back to young people and what you might be thinking as a parent or as someone who is in a leadership role in a local church here, because you've got Christian homes on one level, even with a reluctance to engage in some of the things that your kids are involved in. But because your kids are living in a secularized environment, they're in the schoolyard dealing with AI stuff all the time and all the images and things and the comparison things we were talking about a little bit earlier. So when we're talking Christian homes and secular environments, somehow or other in the Christian home you've got to let your Christianity overlap what's going on. How does this happen, do you think, when we're discussing the sort of influence that we might need to be thinking about as parents or as more senior people thinking about the future of young people?
It's a great question, Neil, and I think it's a really difficult question to answer. And let's be real for a moment, right? Life, for the most, is pretty difficult. And at times, it's really hard to kind of figure out what is the right thing to do. How do we do this? How do we support one another? These big questions have been something that we've been grappling with since the beginning of time. Of things like, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to flourish? What does it mean to hold values? And why do we hold them? How much of it is just ideas that we put in place from things that have happened in the past versus ultimate truth? And I think that is where I would land it, to say, what is ultimate truth? You're talking about now a world where with AI and the digital realms that we have, it is really hard to tell what's fake and what's true, what's real and what's not. And it devises this thing where it just creates almost like this echo chamber that creates stuff for each one of us. Now, if we think about our families, if we think about communities we're in, the thing that I would love to suggest is that what we need to wrestle with is what is absolute truth. And if we actually agree that truth comes from the Creator himself, truth comes from God, and that foundation of what he puts forward for us that can sit as absolute truth, that we are his children, designed by him, made for his purposes, loved by him, seen by him, and known by him. If we can actually have that as some foundational truths, everything else can flourish from there. The problem is that when we are asking what does truth look like, and we're looking to all sorts of images that are around us, all sorts of ideas, all sorts of, world perspectives, all sorts of connection points that we have digitally, that truth becomes something that is not something we can stand on with confidence. And it harks back to, you talk about Gen Z, especially males, coming back to the church. I think this is a huge part of it. Wanting to know what is an absolute biblical truth that will stand the test of time of being a trustworthy foundation that they can hold on to.
I'm often heard saying truth comes dressed in flesh and blood. And, of course, my reference there is to Jesus Christ, the Son of God, who at that incarnation, ripples around the earth like an earthquake. The presence of God, the truth, the very person of God had arrived. And now here we are, all these years, 2,000 years later, and we're still talking about him, and we're reflecting on, we're celebrating, and we're worshipping God, because truth comes dressed in flesh and blood. And when we talk about our identity, here we are identifying with the truth, the ultimate truth. So when this comes into practice, I love the way you're thinking here, Noddy, the place of prayer in a family, of devotion, of engaging, even if it's at a shallow level, might be at a deeper level too, but engaging with the Bible so you can hear from God and expose the ultimate truth. I mean, am I oversimplifying this? I mean, this is something you can take away from a conversation today as to how you start to connect with the ultimate truth. What are your thoughts here?
I love it, Neil. And okay, are you oversimplifying? My answer to that is no. I think we tend to make things too complicated. And I like simple. Simple's good. Simple means we can hang on to it. And I can't help, when I start thinking about these things and what are the patterns that we're putting in place, I can't help but think of the fact that there was this beautiful moment through Scripture. We see it in Joshua especially, this pile of stones that's built after they crossed the flooding Nile, and that the ark comes through. They haven't even taken over the walls yet. Anyway, they get told, build this pile of stones. And then the purpose of it, so that whenever you walk past for generations to come, you can point to it and remind each other of what it is that God has done, right? How he's turned up and how he's rescued you. I think that beautiful imagery of creating piles of stones, these moments with our families, with our communities, to keep celebrating what it is that the truth that God has actually interceded, that he's broken through, that he's made a way for us to be in relationship with him, that he loves us and cares for us. These monuments that we should be building in life are things that we can point to. And then I would also add that part of the cultural picture that we see shifts, and this is a very simple one too, if you keep following the thread of that story, right, eventually God's people get to the promised land, right? They've come out of slavery into this exile place, eventually get to the promised land. And just before they're going to take it over, God says this really interesting thing to them. He says, hey, you're about to actually enter into this land, and you're gonna have all the spoils in the world. You're gonna have vines that you didn't plant, wells that you didn't dig, houses you didn't build, honey that you haven't actually put in place. It's going to be incredible. And at some point, you're going to sit back and look at this blessing and go, look what we did. Don't forget that actually it has nothing to do with you, that it's my gift to you. And sure enough, we know this story, right? And humanity goes forward and they forget what it is that God has done to get them there. But But the whole premise, the whole ask for us is don't look at the cleverness, don't look at the blessings, don't look at the spoils of this world and think somehow you've done this. Keep remembering that this has been a gift from God. If we can live with our minds in that space of saying, wow, all the incredible stuff that we get to look at around the world today, it's not mankind that's just done this. This is actually genuinely a gift from God. He's given us the ability to be able to do this. He's set this all in motion. He's in it. He's around it. He's through it. He's got a plan in it. And our job is to build those monuments, to build those moments in life that keep pointing to his goodness and not for a second think that it's actually about us.
Taking calls 1800 316 316. Let's hear from Paul in Brookton in WA. Hey, Paul, thank you for waiting. What are your thoughts?
Yes, in Proverbs 19, verse 20 to 21, we read about a makshenaveth in Hebrew. That's a machine or a device or a cunning plan or thought. It comes from the word chesab, according to Strong's Concordance, which means to compute, to add up, etc. So we're not to be alarmed. God's well aware of it. He says, take heed to my counsel. That's more important. So we need to understand God's counsel, and that's spelled out for us in Proverbs chapter 1, verse 22 on, where he says, how long will you scoffers love scoffing and fools hate knowledge? So we need to be aware of God's counsel on end times. The church needs to be made aware of it and search for it, like buried treasure, as it says in Proverbs. And this is the way we get wisdom and understanding. As Jesus said to the Jews, we need to search. They search the Scriptures for they think in them that they have eternal life. So likewise, we need to search the Scriptures to find out what this is all about. And we've done that, and we know wholeheartedly what it's all about. We've been alerting the churches to this and trying to bring back true Christian unity, apostolic truth, which was delivered once to the saints according to Jude 3, not 300 years later at Nicaea by a sun god worshipper in 325 AD, which we're now in the month of that 1700th anniversary. Your thoughts on that?
Paul, a really great set of things there. I'm just going to go straight to Noddy. What are your thoughts here for Paul and his thoughts?
Well, first of all, thank you. Love your thoughts. I think it's amazing. Let me pick on let me pull the thread a little bit more on, us understanding these times. I think I can't help but think, the men of Ithaca that understood the times and knew what to do. I actually think that 100% those people are in our midst. And that's what our hope is that we keep making space for those people who can understand the times, can see what's coming, and have the wisdom to be able to lean back on God's guiding, to be able to lead the church, the bride of Christ, into the future that absolutely 100% brings all of us back into a space of knowing who he is.
Hey, Paul, I love your devotion to really just getting into deeper in the Scriptures, and I think that's an inspiration for us all, for every listener. Paul in Brookton in WA, thank you so much for your call. Hey, Noddy, International Youth Day coming up. Any thoughts there? World Youth Day, 12th of August. The theme, Youth Advancing Multilateral Cooperation Through Technology and Partnerships. One of these sort of organic things that you hope young people get to participate in here. And it's not just a national thing, it's an international thing here. Any thoughts around World Youth Day?
I love World Youth Day, Neil. I think it's a great initiative. The danger is, of course, is that we can actually just leave it to them. and my call out would be, World Youth Day acts as a great signpost, something to remind all of us that as we are trying to encourage them to think around the future and that they're at the pointy end of that, pushing into it, the onus is also on us to ask the question of how do we empower them to do that?
All right, how do we empower them to do that? And it's been a great conversation today, and I know that there'll be listeners who are thinking, I might have to send a link for this podcast to some family members and to some others who are in our local community. Hey, Noddy, the Abel movement, have you got any special initiatives that are coming up that listeners might like to link to? Is there something coming in the times just ahead? You can say, hey, we've got this happening, need a little bit of extra support here, or why don't you join and be a partner with what we're doing? What's happening with the Abel movement?
So Abel is continuing to do some really cool things in schools. That's growing. If you're in a school and you're engaged in this and you're watching your culture and you're thinking to yourself, hey, how do we engage this? We'd love to hear from you. Happy to help. We've got a number of stage ways that we can do that, whether it's with your leadership, whether it's with teachers, whether it's with students, or even as a pastor. If you're leading a church and you're thinking, hey, I'd love to be able to engage with our local communities a bit better, and we can help you think through that. And help you strategize around that, we'd love to help. The other thing we've got coming up, Neil, is we've just spent the last few months doing a bit of a deep dive into AI and future generations and what that looks like. And we're developing a campaign that's really calling on the government for 5 key initiatives that are sitting in that space to really help in terms of AI safety, getting families ready for this stuff, understanding the job front, the educational space as well. And so, look, keep an eye out, because as we bring that forward and as we start to really try and boost that campaign and get young people's voices in there, we'd love your support. We think it's vitally important, and we think that Australia is well positioned to be able to lead the conversation in this in a really healthy way that is thinking and redemptive edges in that space.
It's abelmovement.org, and there are all sorts of dimensions there you can explore. I mean, there's some links there for young people, for pastors, for schools, and for parents. And these other initiatives that we're talking about, you can connect with Noddy Sharma. He's leading the Abel movement. It's a platform that's dedicated to empowering the next generation in faith, leadership, and social impact. Their website, Abel, spelled A-B-E-L. What's that all about? If you missed the first part of our conversation, there's some connections there to Cain and Abel. The abelmovement.org. Noddy Sharma, thanks so much for sharing your insights with us once again today on 2020.
Thank you for having me, Neil.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.